I'm thinking that as more and more comes out, he will be more privy to be sharing things about the royal family and trading secrets for cash.
Well, he's a private individual now, Samara. Do you know about this? It's like we were investigating his new property up in Sandringham. We believe it's a place called Marsh Farm, but we're told by the palace that they cannot comment because there's GDPR, which is like data protection rules, and that he's a private individual. Does he now deserve to be a private individual, to live a private life up in Sandringham without us asking questions about where he lives, and should he speak to the police?
What was supposed to be one of the warmest and most reassuring moments on the royal calendar instead delivered one of the coldest images of the year, because the King's annual pre-Christmas lunch at Buckingham Palace is traditionally a polished display of unity, familiarity, and festive harmony, with senior royals arriving smiling, extended family members following close behind, and cameras capturing the same unspoken message every time that all is well inside the House of Windsor. Yet this year that picture cracked when, as the Prince and Princess of Wales led arrivals in London and Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie were photographed laughing as they joined the celebration, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor was nowhere near the palace and instead appeared miles away, riding alone on horseback through Windsor Great Park in pouring rain, soaked, silent, and visibly isolated, a contrast so sharp it immediately drew attention, because photographs released that day showed rain dripping from the peak of his riding hat and streaking down his face as he sat rigid in the saddle with a fixed, unsmiling expression, offering no sign of enjoyment, interaction, or warmth, just a solitary figure moving through bleak weather while the rest of his family gathered for a lunch he was not invited to attend, and according to body language and communications expert Judy James, that image felt anything but accidental as she described Andrew's appearance as going full-on Marley's ghost, deliberately gloomy and almost theatrical, noting there was no hint of pleasure or exhilaration and that he simply sat there looking solemn and heavy, but the real impact, she explained, came from the timing and contrast, because at that exact moment his daughters were being photographed inside warm cars, bundled in festive coats, smiling and laughing as they arrived at Buckingham Palace. A visual split so stark it risked projecting emotional pressure rather than quiet dignity, since, as she put it bluntly, if you want people close to you not to feel guilty about attending a gathering you are excluded from, you normally make a point of coping well, waving them off cheerfully and staying comfortable at home, not placing yourself in a position that turns you into a living symbol of exclusion, which is precisely what Andrew appeared to do. Even though his absence from the King's pre-Christmas lunch itself was no surprise given that he has not attended in recent years and has remained excluded following his removal from royal duties, the loss of his titles, and the ongoing fallout from his association with Jeffrey Epstein. But what made this moment different was the broader context, because the lunch took place as renewed attention continues to swirl around his past, with more Epstein-related material expected to surface, and with King Charles having already made his position unmistakably clear after previously describing Andrew as having shown serious lapses in judgment and publicly aligning himself with survivors of abuse, sending a firm message that Andrew is out, while his daughters are not, since Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie remain firmly inside the royal fold, both attending the lunch, both photographed smiling, and both continuing to receive invitations when they choose to appear, a distinction that matters deeply within royal circles, especially since royal watchers will remember that last year neither Andrew nor Sarah Ferguson attended Christmas celebrations, and that pattern has now clearly solidified, with the former Duke of York and his ex-wife excluded while their daughters are treated entirely differently, a decision reportedly driven by King Charles's close relationship with Beatrice and Eugenie and his determination not to punish them for their parents' actions, meaning invitations continue for them even when they do not for Andrew, which brings the focus back to that rain-soaked ride, because while some believe it was simply part of his usual routine and others argue it was unfortunate timing, Judy James and several observers see something more intentional, describing his clenched jaw and forward-fixed gaze as signals of determination rather than resignation, a man pushing forward despite the weather, the circumstances, and the optics, creating an image of solitary endurance that stood in almost deliberate contrast to the warmth and comfort his daughters were enjoying, and whether intentional or not, the effect was powerful, with the Marley's ghost comparison resonating because it evoked the image of a man haunting the edges of a celebration he can no longer join, present but excluded, circling but unseen, raising an uncomfortable question about whether Andrew was attempting to send a silent message to his daughters through imagery rather than words, potentially leaving them conflicted about attending family events without him, even as Andrew himself has offered no comment on the photographs and the true motivation behind the ride remains unknown. Though royal life has always been driven as much by symbolism as substance, and this symbolism was difficult to ignore, especially with another reality looming behind the scenes as reports suggest Andrew is in his final weeks at Royal Lodge, the sprawling 30-room Windsor property he has occupied for years, with preparations underway for a forced move to a much smaller residence on the King's private Sandringham estate, belongings already being placed into storage, and a significant downsizing ahead, a shift that underscores just how far he has fallen from once being a central figure within the monarchy, making that lonely ride feel heavier still, as not just exclusion from a lunch, but the closing of an entire chapter, while inside the palace life carried on uninterrupted with the king hosting as usual, the Prince and Princess of Wales leading proceedings, extended family arriving smiling, cameras flashing, and festive continuity carefully preserved, even as within Andrew's own family life moves forward without him, with Princess Beatrice attending the lunch while her husband was absent due to work commitments in Los Angeles, a reminder that professional obligations are normal within royal marriages. Yet for Andrew, this absence cut far deeper because it was not a scheduling conflict, but a clear boundary, one the palace made no attempt to soften through alternate appearances or reassuring statements, leaving only silence, rain, and a distant photograph, leading some royal watchers to view this as the firm holding steady and others as a carefully maintained line, where Andrew remains physically close to royal life in Windsor yet socially and symbolically removed. And what stands out most is how openly that reality is now being displayed, with no effort to disguise the separation as images were published, commentary followed, and no one rushed to correct the narrative, leaving Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, once at the center of royal life, riding alone in the rain while his family gathers without him, which brings us to the real question: was this a moment of genuine solitude or a carefully chosen act of silent messaging? And as the royal family heads toward Christmas at Sandringham, is Andrew's isolation now permanent, or is there any path left back, even to the outer edges of royal life? And if you want more updates like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.